Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So it is, save the best for last. Save the very best for last. We have the pleasure of 6 startups or young companies giving us an overview what they're actually doing, what they intend to do, and how they are doing. Chris Grove is the moderator. He will just walk us through. We have 3 experts on the panel as well who will just shoot some questions about each and every of the 6 prospects. So, Chris, just start us up.
Very good. First of all, I think it is more than appropriate to offer a round of applause for our hosts at iGaming Next. This has been a wonderful event and an amazing opportunity to see people in a variety of formal and informal settings. For those of you in the corners, I would encourage you to maybe come in, tighten up a little bit. The water is fine. We do have 6 companies. They are of varying age ranges, but all of them have one thing in common. They provide us with a lens through which to view the future of our industry, because it is that future that they are in many ways actively defining through the work that they are doing. Before we start with those companies, I would like to give my colleagues off to the left here an opportunity to introduce themselves, starting with Lloyd.
Thank you, Chris. Lloyd Danzig, managing partner of Sharp Alpha Advisors. We're a venture capital firm that specializes in sports betting and online gaming.
Melissa Blau, founder of iGaming Capital, advisor to a number of casinos, been in the industry for 20 years, and prior to that, I was in venture capital. I'm an advisor at Bettor Capital, too.
We're teaming up here. VanEgmond, founder and CEO of Bettor Capital, a venture capital firm focused on the real money online gaming ecosystem. Prior to venture, was an executive at FanDuel and Barstool Sports.
And I am Chris Grove. I'm a co-founder and a general partner at Akiez Investments. Yes, that's how you say it. Don't blame me. I did not choose the name. So, with the introductions out of the way, I would like to introduce our first founder, our first company to the stage, and that's Jaymee Levine, CEO and founder of Underdog Fantasy. So, a hand for Jaymee. Underdog is the fastest growing fantasy sports company ever, currently offering 3 core fantasy games, including Best Ball. Underdog recently launched the largest season-long fantasy tournament in the history of the industry, Best Ball Mania 3, with a $10 million prize pool. Underdog is founded by a team of industry veterans and backed by top-notch investors. Thanks. Underdog is going to continue to innovate across the spectrum of sports gaming and is soon to launch their first licensed online sports betting games. With that introduction out of the way, we're going to jump right into it. Who's got the first question for Jaymee and Underdog?
Sure. Jaymee, you've been highly successful in this industry for a long time. What motivated you to start another company and kind of innovate in the space?
A lot. We saw an opportunity when we started Underdog. There was kind of a specific game format that we saw was missing from the market. The company I founded before was called Draft. You're obviously quite familiar with. We sold it to Paddy Power Betfair, then got merged into FanDuel, then got shut down by FanDuel. So there was a game missing and a game customers loved, and we thought that was a great launching point. But the difference between when we started Underdog and when we started Draft is obviously sports betting is now legal in America. And as we kind of looked around at the market, we thought that there was a real opportunity to take what I think kind of my past businesses have always focused on, which is great customer experience, great product and technology, and bring it to the sports betting market. And we thought that we could get started, thought there really wasn't a path to start as a consumer kind of sports betting direct-to-consumer brand, right? Because getting licensed is expensive, getting customers is expensive, it's some tough technology to build, but we could start in fantasy, build some structural advantages, much like FanDuel and DraftKings did starting in fantasy, that kind of have helped them win this market so far, and do that in kind of a next wave, kind of next generation way. And thought kind of Underdog and the games we've launched so far were the perfect launching point, and then we get to go towards the future and bring our innovative talents into sports betting.
Do you see yourself as a purely B2C operator, or at some point would you venture into B2B, especially as you go more towards real money gaming?
Definitely B2C.
Interesting.
Jaymee, there obviously are a whole bunch of platforms on which users can risk money while predicting sports-related outcomes. If we were to survey all of your users and ask, why do you keep playing on Underdog? What keeps you engaging with the platform? what do you think the top 1 or 2 answers would be?
I hope there's a whole host. Look, we really focus on customer experience. So that starts with product, right? We have different game types than are offered elsewhere, right? We have 3 different game types, and we really focus on making sure those games are as fun as possible to play. And then customer experience in general, obviously customer support's a big part of that, and just kind of the mantra of the company. And we focus a lot on kind of brand and community, and try to have a good reputation and earn a good reputation.
How do you think about building your business as you go state by state, operating different products in different jurisdictions? Talk about how you build a really big business in an environment that's often state by state and complex with different products.
Yeah, it's got a lot of complexity to it, obviously, right? We intend to be innovative, and that means we're building new game types, and a lot of those game types are going to need to be regulated, and those are going to be game types or formats that regulators haven't seen before. So it's just going to take a lot. I mean, we're very much in that growing up phase right now. We just crossed 100 people. We're just over a 2-year-old company. We started in February of 2020, but we're making a lot of hires of people who have been there before. Someone I think a lot of people in this room probably know you've worked with before, Stacey Stern, just joined us from FanDuel. She's someone I've known for 10 years. She's the president of the Fantasy Sports Gaming Association. She ran public policy and government affairs for FanDuel. That's obviously going to be really valuable as we go build relationships with regulators. We brought over other people from FanDuel, from PointsBet, from Penn National, et cetera. So we're bringing in people that really have great reputation and respect, people that the regulators already know and respect, and hopefully that can help us as we kind of sit over here and say we're going to dream of new concepts, but we want to make sure they're relatable and understandable to regulators as well. There's
been a lot of companies that have tried to go up against FanDuel and DraftKings. Obviously, you started a couple, and a lot of them have struggled, right? So what makes this sort of a little bit different?
Yeah, I've spent my whole life, adult life trying to compete against FanDuel and DraftKings. Draft, when we sold it, was the 3rd largest fantasy sports company. Right. I've learned a lot, honestly, from the draft experience, right, where I was doing something different. Before Draft, I was running a company called Star Street. Star Street was the 3rd largest salary cap daily fantasy site when we sold the assets of it in 2014 to both FanDuel and DraftKings. And we were doing the same thing. Behind us, there were about another 80 companies that came to launch real money daily, salary cap daily fantasy, some really well backed, some with real structural advantages like Yahoo or Cantor Fitzgerald, and they all failed trying to do the same things as FanDuel and DraftKings. We kind of did something different with Draft and built a different format and a different game and had some success with that. One of the only fantasy companies or fantasy operators that ever had any success, right? And I think we're seeing the same thing happening in licensed betting right now, where there's 55 brands out there, and they're all trying to do the same things as FanDuel and DraftKings. And those are really smart, really quality companies. And I don't think many of them, I think very, very few, 1 or 2 maybe, will succeed in playing the same game as FanDuel or DraftKings. We're trying to do something very different, right? We like to view ourselves as a game studio in a licensed betting environment, not a sportsbook company. And I think that's a real departure from how everyone else in the industry is looking at it.
To follow up on that, your current business model is this single-player fantasy model. Do you see that as a stepping stone to operating a sportsbook? Is it an end in and of itself? Is it a bit of both?
Yeah, so that's one of the 3 games we currently offer. And Chris is going to roll his eyes at this because he hears me talk about this all the time. But we've got this vision of pillars, right? And multiple pillar products. And that vision keeps expanding. From when we started this business, it was probably 6. I think there's 9 now. Fantasy is one of those pillars, right? In the 3 games we have that roll up in a fantasy. Sportsbook is one of those pillars. Live betting experience, and we like to think of that outside the lens of traditional sportsbook. It's another one of those pillars. Betting games is another one of those pillars. I'm not going to give it all away, but those are the obvious ones.
And how do you think about technology innovation and partners in this industry? Because you're not going to build it all yourself. Even the biggest companies in the world don't build it all themselves. So how do you think about partnering with other young companies in the space to help you grow? Yeah,
we're gonna try to build a lot of it ourselves. Certainly the core pieces. And one of the benefits we have is we get to take a long time horizon. We've got amazing capital partners who are kind of bought into the long-term vision and with us for the long term. And so we don't have to optimize for revenue tomorrow. We get to optimize for building the biggest business in the space over what we think is a 7 to 10 year time horizon. But obviously there are tons of businesses that we rely on and work with, whether it's the data providers, whether it's a company like Simplebet and the product they've built, and there will be a ton more. So we're always kind of trying to get places like this and meet all the quality B2B companies and see how we can take what they do and leverage that into quality customer experience and product.
What's been your experience in working with the leagues? Have they been favorable? I had started a fantasy company that was also single game, and a couple of leagues were not that happy, right? So I just wanted to know, like, have they been helpful? Because maybe has the industry grown a little bit? Have they matured? And then also, speaking of sponsorships or partnerships, how you view the importance or not of working with teams as well as part of that?
Yeah, it's in kind of formal working relationships, it's not something we've really done or needed to do. I just, from kind of years of doing this, have relationships with a lot of people across the leagues and the teams, and everyone seems quite supportive of what we're doing and kind of excited by what's coming for us. But there's been no real formal kind of working relationship nor the need for it with teams or leagues at this stage.
I think one of the very admirable reputations you've developed among investors is the speed with which you guys come up with a new idea, build it, ship it, it's in the app. You mentioned you're just getting to the point of having 100 employees. Obviously, some of your competitors are much larger, have much larger headcounts. Why do you think it is that it at least seems you're able to often build and ship product much more quickly and efficiently?
Look, I think there's a culture advantage. I mean, it's startups in general, right? There's the constant question that I think investors a lot dumber than yourselves will ask: why can't Google build this? Why can't Yahoo build this, right? And there's cultural incentives all the way through the ranks, right? A product manager at Yahoo isn't going to be incentivized in the same way and work in the same hours, and just they're not going to want to do the same things we're going to want to do, right? And I think we've really focused a lot on just building a real product and engineering-led culture and a place where smart people want to come and work because they're going to be allowed to work, right? And allowed to innovate and do what they want to do. I think in a lot of larger orgs, you're kind of told to do a job, and we very much have a culture where it's like, you come in here and you tell us what to do. You tell us what you want to do. We're hiring women like Stacy to tell us what to do, right? She came in and she's like, what do I do? I'm like, Stacy, you tell me what you do. I don't know what you do. You know way better than I do.
How do you think about what's next on the horizon, or what should we think about as the time horizon? You said 7 to 10 years. What should folks in the audience be looking for you to do this football season and over the next kind of 3 to 12 months in that short-term time horizon?
Yeah, our current focus is on kind of just getting a handle on the growth we've had and make sure we continue to scale up on the growth in fantasy, and then launching our first licensed betting product. And so by the end of this year, you should hopefully see a licensed betting product that looks like something you haven't seen elsewhere and that customers are loving.
Certainly 100 more questions we could ask and 100 more interesting answers you could give, but the clock is telling us that our time together is drawing to an end. So a hand for Jaymee.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys.
Next in the hot seat, we have Simon Lidzén, the CEO and co-founder of Fast Track. So let's give a hand for Simon. Returning to the stage, actually. Founded in 2016, Fast Track is a high-growth B2B SaaS company with a mission to digitalize the iGaming industry and deliver the first self-learning engagement platform. Fast Track is revolutionizing operational processes by providing a world-class retention automation platform that increases the scalability of iGaming businesses and is built on the founding principle that each iGaming operator is unique. With that, who's got the first question for our friend Simon?
I can go. So there's a bunch of companies that are doing this right now, right? How do you uproot them?
Wow. Okay, so from CRM perspective in general, there are quite a few actors that are trying to compete in this space, but I think you have to step back to the very core of Fast Track and why it was founded in the first place. So all of the founders behind Fast Track, we've been on the operator side facing the challenges that the partners that we're working with today are facing every day. And you could tell that the landscape and the other CRM platforms that might be in the market today have a little bit different viewpoint on how they want to conduct business. And we sort of founded Fast Track on the principle that there is always a better way. The whole culture within the business is always trying to challenge and push and trying to find that. And the promises that we came out with when we built the platform was that, number one, it's quite common that when you license a third-party platform that you go into some sort of a service provider that might take you hostage a little bit in terms of how they want you to conduct your business. And I think, the last thing in the introduction is pretty much spot on for Fast Track, which is that every business is unique. So we wanted to be a tech company that provides a tech stack from a CRM platform's perspective. And we built it specifically for iGaming, which allowed us to zoom in on the complexity of the CRM landscape and how iGaming operations actually look like, and then tackle those more effectively. So that resulted in a platform that was very flexible so that you could compare it to sort of building an internal solution. That's our main competitor. Are you going in-house or are you going with Fast Track? That's like sort of the main competitor for Fast Track. And then secondly, the fact that we founded it on real-time data, I think that was a huge differentiator. We came out with that very early. No one else was touching real-time data at the time. Everyone was transferring files on SFTP folders in order to like sort of update their CRM platforms. And we thought that was bonkers. It's like, how do you run your business based on like sort of data and events that happened yesterday? You got to be there, right? And even more so when you're online. So that was the second thing. And then obviously the process. When you build something specifically, this is the benefit of focusing on one industry, is that you can really zoom in on the problem and the process and whatever. And in iGaming, you can see that you have central teams that are working across multiple markets. They have multiple product verticals, and they have different demanding regulatory landscapes. And there is like a lot of those different things adds complexity to operational processes. Like there's more teams that needs to be involved. There is like different things that needs to happen in the sort of the execution flow of doing CRM. So when you're looking at Fast Track, we have reinvented the process. We took a different take on how to do it. So I think that maybe is the best way to answer your question.
Certainly solves a lot of my problems right now.
Thank you.
Simon, you started to refer to this a bit, but can you talk more about what it is about the iGaming landscape that lends itself to an industry-specific solution as opposed to a more generic solution from an established provider?
Yeah, so I mean, this is important, right? Because when you're looking at, I would say, the majority. At least when we started Fast Track, we were the only CRM platform that was built specifically for iGaming at the time. There are a couple of alternatives possibly that I've seen coming around. But the complexity with the iGaming landscape is that the things that I touched on. We usually have central teams, one operations that are operating multi-brand operations, and there is a multi-localization that needs to happen. And there is complexity in terms of which products and which content, vast amounts of content. We're talking tens of thousands of games in the casino space with hundreds of different providers. And then, if you go into sportsbook, there's other complexities around the sportsbook and the locality of the markets that you're providing. And like there is just so much difference to if you're looking at a retail or e-commerce operation where the transaction is, these most other platforms in the market, they are focused in the retail space, and that's a very different industry. I would compare Fast Track and how it's designed. We work in entertainment, so I mean that's sort of the closest comparison. But there is not that many options available in the market at all right now. So yeah, that rounds up a little bit the complexity that you're talking about.
And how do you think about? Obviously, we're in New York City and a lot of U.S.-focused companies here. How do you think about bringing best of breed, best-in-class technology from Europe in a more mature market and leveraging those experiences to support the hyper-growth expansion that's happening today in North America?
Yeah, I think like we have a lot to learn about how the operations are conducted here in the US, but I also think that the operators over here has a lot to learn from the operations that we have done in Europe. And I mean, we had a conversation about this just recently when I was talking to Osric here about these sort of situations. I mean, that's obviously a problem that has been either it's not known, but it's definitely a problem that is occurring and it's going to scale even in the US market. So when we're looking at customer models, obviously we are quite sophisticated at least in how we're working with Fast Track with that, both in terms of AI and in terms of how we look at different cohorts in order to target players properly. And I mean, this is obviously something that is obviously very close to the operations of the business. But there is a lot of things that we can bring with us. And from an operator's perspective in getting the right solution, then I think there is an opportunity, especially now when so much focus is go-to-market, right? We've had that in Europe as well. Like when there was this regulation wave happened in Europe, when everyone was regulating, we went from sort of MGA licenses to local licenses. That happened both when I was over at Betfair and when I was over working at Betsson. And you can see the tech roadmaps just disappearing. It's just like every single wish from everyone inside the organization is disappearing. The only thing that is focused is getting to market on a specific time. And I mean, we can provide like sort of one integration that can give a white label, like sort of model for their internal business I'm talking, how they can conduct CRM and roll out probably a very comprehensive, I would say, CRM strategy. Even though the markets will be different and they will be different from one another, you can build a comprehensive sort of automation strategy that you can put in place. You can rely on, for example, that retention and so on is taken care of at least half decently as you're scaling your operation.
I find the iGaming and sports betting industry in the States very polar, meaning there's a handful of really big companies that are tons of people that are solving a lot of these kind of problems, but then there's a lot of companies that are smaller, that are struggling, they don't have as many people. What kind of services and support are you giving those little ones to help them almost behave like the big ones?
Yeah, I mean, there is obviously, like, when you're looking at the small operations, they have other benefits, right? They're very agile, all right? They are able to move when other, like, sort of larger organizations struggle to move. So there is obviously benefits for both parts here, because the smaller operator, I find them mostly the ones that innovate the most, actually, that are putting fast track. Like, when I'm looking at the mid-size operator to small operators, they're usually the ones that have the most exciting visions about what they want to do with the CRM and with this sort of engagement investment. And, you know, they think about efficiency and effectiveness. Like, how can I make less resource be able to do more? And that then our proposition becomes very relevant. Like, when they can go in and see, like, wow, this is so easy to work with, then obviously it makes it easier for them to make a decision to say, do I need to hire another 4 people in my team, or can I do with the 3 I have and scale with something like this? So we are quite fortunate with that in terms of helping the smaller operator. And I love, personally, that's like, a lot of the innovation is coming from there. Like, they are really pushing us. Like, it's normally, there is 2 different relationships in that, like, but the smaller operators and mid-size operators with huge visions and ambitions, I love that. That's the best.
Simon, one last question to wrap us up. How do you keep those shoes so impossibly white? So a hand for Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
We bring our third company to the stage, and that's Karolina. Oh no, Pelc. Karolina Pelc. So a hand, please, and a boo for me not checking with her in advance for how to say her name. I do apologize for that. BeyondPlay, which Karolina is the founder and CEO of, is an exciting startup that will disrupt the world of real money online gaming. Its platform provides a multiplayer-enabled interface and proprietary and cost-effective video streaming service that allows players to join the same game session on any slot game, pool their stakes, and share the thrill of winning and losing while interacting with each other. Considering the heavy male domination of the iGaming industry, a tech startup where 6 out of 9 full-time employees are female, including a full female management team, BeyondPlay sets new standards not just in the field of tech and product innovation, but also in company culture and a strong focus on diversity and inclusivity. And I think that deserves a seconding. A massive issue for the long-term sustainability of our industry, but that's a separate issue. Our conversation now revolves around you and the thing that you have built. So who has the first question?
I can go first real quick. You told me an amazing story yesterday of why the company is called BeyondPlay, because I think it was called something else previously. So I'd love if you could share that with the audience.
Yeah, I think it is an amazing story, and I almost feel it's a little bit of a karma that made me even more sure that I wanted to do this, because we were called Shared Play when we first started this business, and the name was trademarked, and we were approached by a random company to sell the name, which, you know, it just doesn't happen. And in the end, this was a very long conversation on the terms of this. We secured the rights to be able to talk about it, because I didn't want it to come across like we infringe on someone else's trademark. We sold the name and we rebranded. And then if you Google the name Shared Play, you'll very quickly realize, you know, what product is called like that. And there was a big Apple developer conference that released a chat feature, which is about sharing experiences, which is called Shared Play. So, you know, I can never say that it was specifically Apple, but you know, I have some strong suspicions to a certain extent. So I think it's a very interesting story because it provided us with additional capital that helped us grow at a very early stage. So.
What do you think the role of social functionality is in the future of iGaming, and why do you feel that an early stage company is better positioned to supply that than a larger B2B incumbent or an operator themselves?
So the first part of the question, I think in what we believe that we're going to bring to the industry is incremental revenue generation from different demographic. So we don't think that existing players are going to change their way of playing and all of a sudden stop playing single player slots and start playing multiplayer. We think this is a demographic of players that grew up with multiplayer video games and social media and constant interaction, watching streams on Twitch and so on. We think they're expecting different type of engagement, and that's what we want to provide. Now, also, it's a very good cross-sell tool from other multiplayer products like Bingo or Live Casino, and at the moment there is not that much out there that actually works at cross-selling those players. Now, why we're better positioned is I think, the big companies, their hands on innovation are sometimes tied to specific revenue objectives, and this is a very experimental product. So I think we can be a bit more brave and gutsy about trying innovation. We can also be content agnostic, because if you look at providers that would put big resources on this, that would be ring-fenced to their specific content, whereas we hope to offer our solution on all kinds of games so that it covers majority of the portfolio. And the operators, they're so focused on regulatory requirements on their roadmaps that it's quite difficult to even get a content studio integration, forget trying to build completely innovative feature. So that's why I think the timing is right for us.
I appreciate that you're mobile first, right? But I also can't help thinking that the inordinate amount of time that I spend in a retail casino at clients and the individualized social experience of playing on a slot machine, have you experimented or looked at how to transform that whole experience? Because I almost feel like this industry is in a dangerous spot for the next generation because they want that shared experience, and I do think that you guys can be that solution.
I think we're going to look, because there's just, we're at such an early stage that there could be a million different pivots for the company, right, where we go with this. And we talked about it yesterday. We have a vision of, trying to extend the solution into actual social gaming, which is really big in the US. And even though it's called social, it is not collaborative, it's still competitive, and what we do is collaborative social, where people just play and experience things together. But we actually do it opposite, because I come from land-based casino background. My humble beginnings was a casino dealer, so I've seen firsthand how that interaction and people enjoying the gambling experience together changes their perception of it. And I worked on the cruise ship, it's all about entertainment rather than winning money, right? And it's impossible to replicate the excitement of a craps game in the casino without the multiplayer setting, without all the vibe and atmosphere and the chanting around it. So we're trying to bring that experience into online, but you're right, there is certain level of experience, because you see those big slot machines in Vegas where they have shared 2 or 3 seaters and they play together. And there is even an experience in the younger demographic in Europe, where guys in Sweden would meet up on a Friday night, they would pool their money together, one of them would deposit to online casino, they would play some spins, and then when the experience finished, they will revolute each other the money. So we're trying to bring this into a totally seamless experience, where not only you can do that with our app, but you can also do it with people based completely remotely in different parts of the city, eventually different countries as well. So.
On one of your panels yesterday, you mentioned some of the regulatory and licensing related challenges of being an up-and-coming company in the space. If there was one thing that regulators could learn or come to understand that would make your life a lot easier, what would that be?
I would love to talk to regulators that are pre-regulation about this, and this is the advice I've been given at the conference as well, because in Europe there is no specific regulation that covers our product, so we are navigating this minefield of costs and also trying to explain what we do. And in UK, for example, we need to obtain 3 different types of licenses to cover a product and not have any reputational risk, because nobody knows what this actually should fall under. So I would love to talk to regulators in states that are pre-regulation to try to write it in their statutes that there is multiplayer wave coming, and it's not just us working on it. There's a multitude of little startups or even established companies trying this out, yet there is no legislation and no definition for these types of products. So we still don't know whether we could share liquidity between states, can we share liquidity between jurisdictions in Europe, because it's just undefined for a slot product. It's maybe in place for live casino, but it isn't for slots.
How do you think about what your product might do to grow the overall market? We hear in sports betting, it's bringing a younger demographic into casinos to go wager in a retail sports betting environment. How does your product bring a younger generation into the online casino environment?
I think when it comes to acquiring new players into our product, I think the streaming community is quite big and quite important to us because our solution is, we have two types of experience. One is a community game where there's no streamer, the players just play together, but we also have a streamer experience where he sets the pace of the games and provides a narrative, right? And there's a lot of people watching video game streaming and they naturally fluctuate towards some of them, towards the gambling streams, right? But then there is no way to really monetize them because they're just watching the stream. We are providing the opportunity to let them join the streamer and bet with them, but they need to do it on our product, therefore they need to go to the operator. Another thing is that if you wanted to monetize people watching something on Twitch, it's against Twitch terms and conditions to be able to give them points that are then converted into some kind of monetary value. In our solution, you can watch the stream because we don't require financial commitment for every spin. You can play or you can just watch as a spectator, but we can reward you for the time watched, and these points we own, they're proprietary, so then we can convert them into bonuses, and it opens opportunity for all kind of different marketing tactics that have not been tried before.
What are the similarities or differences between your product and a similar one where it involves betting behind rather than pooling of funds?
Well, it rides on a similar trend. So I think that we see this gap in the market. So everybody tries to put different definition of it. The difference is that we're not a provider. We are a layer that extends the product and provides a multiplayer layer on top of existing games. So we don't actually take any revenues, and we don't, to a certain extent, cannibalize those revenues. The revenues still go to the provider. We are a SaaS, commercial model to the operator. And I think the big difference is that players are still in control of their money because they still have to commit every spin, whether they want to participate or not. It's not someone playing with their money. It's not backing someone behind. So I think it's more active participation rather than just watching someone spending the balance.
Last question.
I have a good one.
Okay.
At some point, do you have to develop your own games in order to really properly take advantage of the platform? I thought that question was good.
That was a good question.
Absolutely.
Mine was a joke,
If you're talking about scale, I mean, we have features in the product that also creates totally incremental revenue because we also do side bets and we do side games that people can do between the spins because the spins are a bit slower. But eventually, we would like to create games, but we're never going to go into single-player slots. I mean, we believe in solution specializations. We have people here that make amazing games. We're never going to be able to compete with that, and we don't want to. But when it comes to learning from this product and how people interact with it and creating a completely new genre of multiplayer slots built from the ground up, sky's the limit. We could try that, or we could partner with some of the existing companies here to try to provide the data and expertise to build those products.
Well, I'm invested in 4 of the 6 companies that we're hearing from today, and Simon and Karolina have made excellent cases that I should go 6 for 6. So a big hand
Thank you.
for Karolina. Now we're going to bring to the stage Jaymee Messler, who is the founder of the Gaming Society. The Gaming Society is a new digital platform committed to making sports betting more inclusive, accessible, and easier to understand for all fans. Founded in 2021 by NBA Hall of Famer Kevin Garnett and sports executive Jaymee Messler, Gaming Society reimagines sports betting and gaming by targeting loyal, underserved fan audiences while prioritizing betting education, athlete perspective, and fan experiences that highlight the fun and social benefits of betting. In particular, GS's Bet on Women is the only initiative in the sports betting category focused exclusively on women's sports and women's sports fans. Who has the first question for Jaymee?
I'll kick it off. Jaymee, you have a pretty cool gig. You're hanging out with Kevin Garnett and Derek Jeter. What are some of the opportunities and also challenges when it comes to working with current or former athletes in and around sports betting?
I think specifically in sports betting, it seems to be another industry, just firstly because it's been taboo for so long, right? Athletes grow up having to stay as far away from betting as they possibly can. So it's another industry, though. It's interesting because it's sort of being built on their backs. You need the athletes in order to bet, but they have no idea how to bet. And because it's still so like gray area, because it's still kind of like figuring out who can talk about what, they're not getting the same opportunities. Yes, they're definitely getting endorsements and they're working with a lot of the sports books, but for good reason, a lot of the agents are keeping their clients away from it. You've seen a lot of things happening with like some ex-NFL players or current NFL players. So you just have to be really careful. And I think that is because we're working with so many athletes, and because I have so much experience working with athletes, it gives a real value, A, for us. I believe if you build an endemic brand in sports, to have an athlete perspective from day one is so valuable. But B, I think it could help set us up to kind of clarify those lines so that we can make sure that athletes are participating in the biggest growth industry in sports in more meaningful ways.
I remember in 2016 at FanDuel, we launched WNBA Fantasy, and it was the first time they had daily fantasy or season-long fantasy for women's sports, and we just saw a big opportunity there in an underserved area. Why do you think the industry has kind of not focused on this yet in the betting category, and kind of what are you doing to bring this underserved audience to the forefront in your business?
I think, firstly, there's less than 4% of visibility available for women's sports. So it's very hard to bet on women when you don't see them, right? Like you saw last year, there was $100 million bet on ping pong in Colorado. And so you kind of try to figure out, like, how do we start to create more equities? I was in Vegas a couple of months ago with a woman who works with me, Marissa Coleman. She played in the WNBA for 10 years, so she has real firsthand knowledge. And we couldn't find a sports book to make a bet on the WNBA playoffs, right? It was really just hard to find it. There's not the same equity when it comes to data and analytics. There's not the same equity when it comes to lines and odds. But I think the opportunity is there. The consumers of women's sports are digitally savvy, they're tech savvy, they're massive fans, like they go out of their way to watch the sports that they love. It's underserved, it's loyal. So I think there's massive opportunity, but the visibility is a big piece of it. So that's part of what we're trying to do also, is really create content and storytelling to help tell the stories of who these women are. We believe if you bet on women, you have to know who they are, and if you do know who they are, you're more likely to bet. So it's something we're learning a lot. I think there's a little bit of a chicken and egg on who's out there, who wants to bet on women. But the other piece is, especially during the summer, there's not that much to bet on. And it's the season for the WNBA, the NWSL, there's so much opportunity. So we just think that that's a place for us to really lean into and help use the growth of the industry to propel women's sports forward.
Is it also an opportunity to actually maybe generate interest in new sports that maybe women are participating more? I mean, my thinking is, once you're going to go away from the television, right? Because you're not going to change what's on TV. So now we have to change how people are consuming sports, right? And so obviously that'll be some kind of narrowcast, some kind of app on your television. But then I guess at that point, do we just try to find also different sports that have been underdeveloped and underappreciated for betting as well, as you said, like table tennis?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the focus is how do we use the growth of this industry? So we have the IP for Bet on Women, and we feel like this is an opportunity because women's sports are having an incredible moment. There's so many companies right now that are helping create more visibility. Those are underserved sports with really loyal fan bases. So I think for us, that's the focus, because I think whether it's WNBA, NWSL, softball, you're seeing also new organizations like Athletes Unlimited, where now there's softball, volleyball, lacrosse. So there's so many also, when I started Players Tribune, there was maybe 3 or 4 buyers of sports content, and now there's 30 plus, right? So there are more people spending money and investing on the visibility piece. So I think that'll start to help as well. But to answer your question, people will bet on anything. So making it accessible, and a big part of our business is educating people on how to bet and educating people on what they're betting on.
I think I met you in like 2015 through Marcy Simon, right?
100%.
Okay.
Everyone knows Marcy Simon.
To that point on education, the sportsbook products are often so complex today, and so for a new customer, male or female, coming in to the ecosystem, it's hard for the casual or new user to get acclimated with that product. How is your business trying with the female audience to, I'll call it, bridge that gap to educate them on the product and get them in to sportsbooks, and then they become highly valuable users?
So a big priority for us, a vertical that we have, is called the Betting Academy. So it's a gamified masterclass where we're going to teach you how to bet on sports through gamification, through knowledge, and give you the tools to do it so that it is more accessible, and we're trying to make it more inclusive. We have, as we're building out the app itself, we're building out coursework on different sports books, so actually helping you understand the differences, because it's different to bet you have to know something different to bet on MLB versus PGA versus NBA, and you have to know something different to bet on FanDuel versus BetMGM. So really using that as an opportunity. We're also doing a lot of content. We have a newsletter. There's a Betting Academy section. We're trying to create different opportunities where it just becomes more inclusive and accessible, and we're driving it by storytelling. So another vertical that we have is called the Dollar Bet Club. And all of a sudden, that's more accessible if you're only going to bet $1, and it's more about, every day we're giving you a different bet to make and why we're all in on this bet, and using our influencer network to kind of build that momentum and almost like that FOMO. But using it all of a sudden, we're like learning how to bet. We're learning about why. We're learning about parlays. We're learning about the difference. So it's really just looking at it, even with the nomenclature, like we're not as focused on the money line and the point spreads, even though that's something that you will learn. It's really focusing on like getting excited about the people that we're betting on and having fun with your friends. People bet because they want to have fun with their friends. It's social. Money's the vehicle, not the destination. So we're trying to make it that, like really make it fun and inclusive.
You founded the Players Tribune with Derek Jeter and now Gaming Society with Kevin Garnett. I'm sure there are plenty of founders here who would love to have a celebrity athlete co-founder. How should they go about finding said founder, and when should they bring them into the operation?
Well, it's not that easy. I think a big part for me has been, I've represented athletes for 20 plus years. So I have a trusted relationship, and that's why, again, I have a lot of athletes that are working on this company because they want to be a part of something and they know the trust is there. The good news is there's so many athletes are so much more savvy about investing right now. Like when we started Players Tribune, athletes had never invested in companies. That was very new. They wanted to get paid for everything they did. And so now athletes are so much more sophisticated and so much more, they want to be investing in companies that they can help bring value to. So my suggestion would be to, whatever obviously betting is a shared focus here, but finding the athletes that make sense. So obviously retired athletes would make sense, and thinking about that authentic connection and then how to obviously maybe get to that athlete. But trust is a big part of it. So it's definitely a long road in terms of like getting someone to be involved from the beginning.
The second part of Lloyd's question is of interest to me, that question of timing. When do you find the best time to bring in that kind of experience, that kind of stature, et cetera? Is it right away, or is there a better point in the curve?
Well, that's the thing. I think for people that don't have that already existing relationship, it's got to be later, because that's when they'll invest. Athletes aren't going to invest in a pre-seed or a seed unless they have such a strong relationship with you. But once you prove it out and you're starting to see athletes investing, when they see all-star investors like you guys involved, and there's that credibility, you guys are more the athletes in a lot of ways that bring the credibility to building the business to get to that Series A, Series B, and that's when the athletes will start to invest. That's when you're seeing Kevin Durant and all the different athletes, usually in a little bit of the later stage.
Last question. You're also an EP on the excellent Netflix series Untold. For those of you in the audience who have not seen it yet, what episode is the best entry point into the series? I'm curious. I know you love all of your children equally, but which one do you love equally more than the others?
Malice in the Palace and Marty Fish. I think they're equal.
All right.
The two.
Big hand for Jaymee. Malice in the Palace or Marty Fish. I would choose Marty Fish, but to each
I would choose Malice in the Palace.
their own, and there's the debate. We are, I can't do math, but we are 4 out of 6 through, and our 5th member of the Hot Six is Stephen A. Murphy, the co-founder and CEO of Boom Entertainment. So a hand for Stephen. Boom Entertainment is on a mission, and they're wishing, just kidding about that part, to redefine online gaming. Boom currently provides award-winning fantasy and free-to-play mobile applications whose hits include the NBC Sports Predictor app, which has been downloaded over 2 million times. Other successful free-to-play partnerships include Barstool Penn, the Yes Yankees Network, Tim Hortons, and many more. The business has raised $25 million to date from some of the biggest names in venture capital, sports, and gaming, and they've used that capital to create new casino and sports betting divisions. You'll see their titles and technology launch in some of the most popular applications and casinos during 2022. Also, probably the first time that Tim Hortons has been name-checked during the conference, I'm going to guess. So we've hit that milestone with out of the way. Who's got the first question for Steve?
Let me just tell you, Tim Hortons, sleeper in Canada.
Yeah?
200,000 daily people playing our game in Canada.
Wow.
So Tim Hortons.
Hey.
I'll follow up on
Sportsbook operators, you may want to reach out.
I'll follow up on the Tim Hortons point. Do you expect to sign more clients that historically might not have been thought of as native to sports media and sports betting? And why are they attracted? Why are they attracted to the proposition now?
Yes, especially in retail. So I think Tim Hortons is a great example. And I'm not a Starbucks user. I gave up caffeine 2 years ago, proud uncaffeinated person. But Starbucks recently put in a game in their app, right? Gaming and loyalty go hand in hand. And so I think you'll see brands like Chick-fil-A and Burger King get into gaming. And as sports betting continues to get destigmatized, you'll see them lean into sports betting as well. And we are happy to fill that need for those brands as well. But traditionally, we get most of our business from big media companies, from the pro sports leagues, and from casinos.
Steve, I remember in 2015, similar to Jaymee, you had a DFS business and we were competing against each other. It's been a road to get to where you are today. Talk to us about all the products that you have to offer and kind of where you're going with new innovative products.
Sure, that was the nicest thing you could have said, competing with FanDuel. I think we had 1/1000th of the revenue of FanDuel. But yes, we launched as a DFS company back in 2015. I think Jaymee and I were the only ones who had non-salary cap products. And I think it says something that I'm sorry, Melissa did as well. There were very few of us, though. There were very, very few of us. And I think that's why you see that, the people who are willing to do things differently have a leg up. In terms of what we're doing now, we have two sides of the business. We have our free-to-play side of the business, 4 million users playing our games in North America, and then we have the real money side of the business. And so the real money side of the business, think of us as an aspiring Games Evolution type company. So we are building blackjack and table games with video integration. We are building unique sports betting games that will live on top of a sports book. We're not building the pipes, we're building the experience layer on top. Sports betting games that will try to convert slot players into sports betting. Think about you're playing a slot machine and all of a sudden you get a 30-second promo opportunity to make a special promo bet that you wouldn't have had the opportunity, but you only won that through a slot game. So we're building slot content, but really geared toward expanding the overall LTV. We are getting back in the DFS game, so we'll launch our renewed DFS product this fall. Super excited about that. We'll launch it under the Boom brand, but we expect it to be a B2B platform for some of our clients. What else? We may dabble in the NFT space as well. We're in the investigation mode right now. And I think that about wraps up what we're at least able to publicly talk about now.
So the ability to cross-sell sports and casino has always been the holy grail because everyone treats them so separately, but we all know the importance of it. When will you have a product to view? Because I'm super excited to see what that would look like.
Yeah, sure. So our first real money casino games go live in 3 to 4 weeks. So pretty soon. We're starting in Michigan with our friends and investors at Rush Street Interactive. We'll be implementing some of our games for Golden Nugget DraftKings this year, and then a third top operator by the end of the calendar year as well. So you shouldn't have to wait long.
How do you balance selling some of these operator clients or prospective operator clients on turnkey differentiation while also selling that same product to their competitors? Do people ask for exclusivity? Is this a topic that comes up frequently in your discussions?
I don't want to give away all my secrets, Lloyd. But yes, it comes up a lot because, think about it from the operators. Operators are very savvy. They want to differentiate, right? People say that, all the products look the same, and some do, but they know that differentiation is key. We choose our partners very strategically. Like they choose us strategically, but we choose them strategically as well. And we look for partners that we want to have long-term relationships with, multi-year relationships with, whether that's multi-lines, whether that's investment, and whether that's product innovation. And because we're willing to go deep with some operators, we are willing to give them some benefits. We are willing to give them a couple titles that are exclusive that we wouldn't give anyone else. We thought that was an important concession to make as an early stage company that was looking to get into all the top operators as quickly as possible.
Steve, Chris made the intro on the NBC Sports Predictor app. We see all the marketing spend in the industry. How was what you're building kind of a CRM tool and creating a lot of value in these big media technology partnerships with companies who are trying to ultimately funnel users into real money sportsbooks. Can you talk about that for a bit?
Sure. So NBC Sports gets a ton of credit. Like I said, we started out as a direct-to-consumer daily fantasy company. And when the Supreme Court ruling happened, NBC Sports and Comcast actually reached out to us and said, hey, we need to have a gaming strategy. We're really impressed with what you've done on the fantasy side. Could you help us out? So NBC Sports had a ton of vision for realizing early that they needed to have a gaming strategy. We decided to sign a multi-year deal with them to effectively, we're B2B2C operators, right? So it's all under the NBC label, now sponsored by PointsBet as well. But we control, all the CRM and the operations and work with them on the data to offer super targeted promotions at key times in the free-to-play games. And it's been one of NBC's most valuable assets for converting users over to the PointsBet Sportsbook. So it's, we work hand in hand with our media partners and our sports betting partners to attract, retain, and convert users to real money.
As a B2B2C company, or a company with a large B2B2C division, do you have to relinquish full control and ability to further monetize those users? Is there any degree to which you benefit from the users that NBC Sports, for example, is acquiring through your white label product?
We don't have a one-size-fits-all deal structure. So, typically, everybody licenses out our technology, but for some clients, we run it for them, but they own the database. It's their front end of the product. But for others who maybe can't afford as much as some other clients, we'll do interesting things like rev share. We'll do interesting things like audience sharing and user base sharing. We're always willing to bet on ourselves and our ability to create a great product. And so if there is a partner that we believe can scale to a certain size, we absolutely want to work with them.
One question I'll jump in with. I know there are a lot of founders I see here in the audience. What is your thinking on the relative merits of having an end customer on the cap table, of which you have a couple? How does that dynamic play? Obviously, you've concluded it plays out to your benefit, but talk us through a little bit on the thinking there and how you balance the potential risks with the upside that comes along with that kind of connection.
It's a great question, and I encouraged a founder, I won't say who it was, this week to consider putting either an operator or supplier on his or her cap table. Sportsbooks, what do they most focus on? Getting live in every new state that opens, right? And as a result, their product roadmap is overloaded. They do not have enough resources for all the things they want to do. Like, everybody says they should innovate, and yes, they should, but they literally can't. They don't have the resources. And you may come to them with a brilliant idea, and they say, yeah, that's brilliant, come back to me in 2 years. Right. And if you're a startup, you just don't have that kind of time, right? But if you convince them that, hey, you're going to be a valuable company in this space, you let them get on the cap table through, you let them in your round and investment, all of a sudden they're incentivized to see you succeed, right? Now, they're out to make as much money as possible. So if our casino games don't perform as well as NetEnt's casino games, they'll promote NetEnt's. But if we're the same and they have a stake in us, like, why wouldn't they promote us more? So we've done that with a couple operators. We would consider doing it in the future because I think that the more you can align your success with your customer's success and your customer's success with your success, the better off you are.
Fascinating to see the common threads between all of these companies, even though they are very different in some ways. Those common threads of focus on differentiation, relationships with customers, innovation, moving at a pace that's relevant to your end users and your end acquirers. Really interesting to see, even though as everyone is different, how much there is still in common. So a big hand for Stephen A. Murphy of Boom Entertainment. Last but certainly not least, the easiest guy to find in any room, the sixth of our hot six, Alex Kane, the founder and CEO of Sporttrade. Sporttrade is a Philadelphia-based fintech company creating an entirely new consumer vertical inside the sports betting industry, trading sports. Their goal is to make trading sports as approachable, liquid, transparent, and seamless as trading a stock. The company recently raised $36 million from leading names across the financial and sports betting industries, including NASDAQ, Jump Capital, Hudson River Trading, and more. The company will launch in New Jersey this summer and focus on appealing to a new audience, traders, a consumer segment eager for a differentiated sports betting experience. That's the tee up. That's Alex. Who's got the first question?
Okay, so your company reminds me of a cross between, I lived in the UK for 15 years, so a cross between Betfair and the one that was doing the spread betting. Sporting Solutions now, but I forgot the predecessor name.
SpreadX.
Yeah, not SpreadX, but there was another one. Sporting Index. So where do you see yourself falling in between those two? Because I feel like a little bit like the Sporting Index is kind of like the spread betting, kind of what PointsBet has been trying to do. Mm-hmm. And then there's always the Betfair model, right? Which is the trading exchange. So where do you see yourself in that?
I think the answer to the question is respectfully, neither. I mean, I don't understand those products a ton. I mean, I've seen them and I look at them and it's really hard for me to understand what I'm looking at as a consumer. I think the things that we more look at are things like a Coinbase, like an FTX US, like a Robinhood, because that's one of the reasons I started Sporttrade. I mean, I was a Robinhood user and all the kids in the finance school were Robinhood users, and someone showed me sports betting and I thought it was going to be what I expected, and it was, looked like a spreadsheet and I didn't know what American odds were. And I think our goal is to bring a new customer to the space, and I think that new customer at ages 18, 19, 20 are trading cryptos, or trading NFTs, or trading collectibles, or trading stocks. And where are they doing that? They're doing it on Coinbase, they're doing it on Gemini, they're doing it on Binance US. So really what we're trying to build is, it does work like an exchange, Sporttrade, but it's supposed to appeal to a customer that maybe understands trading anything else before, betting on sports.
Interesting. That was not what I was expecting. So I'm really, really excited to see it come this summer.
Alex, those companies you likened yourself to, of course, they all have consumer-facing businesses, but to varying degrees, they also have significant institutional-facing businesses. Robinhood, for example, that's actually their primary source of revenue. To what extent do you consider yourself a consumer business? To what extent do you consider yourself an institutional business, and how do you marry the two?
I think we're pretty heavily a consumer-based business, and I think even if you look at Robinhood or Coinbase, everything flows from the retail trader. You need people submitting market orders in order for people to, companies to get edge, and that edge is shared between the operator in the case of Robinhood and the market maker. So I think predominantly we view ourselves as like B2C, but I think what's really interesting about Sporttrade is, or just trading sports generally in the US, I really think it could follow the trajectory very similar to how capital markets exchanges have evolved, in terms of NASDAQ was purely a transactional business, and now NASDAQ is a technology business. They have a market data business. They have their NASDAQ market surveillance business, which we have bought and will partner with them with. So I think over time, there's huge opportunities to act as that more NASDAQ of the industry and provide real-time risk management, real-time odds to operators that maybe find it too expensive to hire 400 traders and put them somewhere and try to figure out, every single machination of every single match and what are the odds at any given time. Because exchanges do a really good job of price discovery, and why not share that price discovery for a small fee for other operators that could derive value from it.
Just to follow up on that, how challenging was it to secure liquidity providers and market makers, and what, if anything, was surprisingly easy about making that pitch?
The easy part was a lot of them had reached out to me and said, yes, we can do this, we can have tighter spreads, we can do a lot of the things that we did in capital markets, and in fact, a lot of our investors and some of the market makers did this in capital markets, and they kind of see the same trajectory. I think capital markets, it was a lot about price and price improvement. I think there's multiple dimensions of execution quality. It's not just price, it's speed, it's approachability, it's the dynamicism, and I think that's where we and the market makers see a huge opportunity, is bringing that stock trading experience. I mean, no one goes on Robinhood and says, I want to place one share to buy one share of Tesla, then waits 10 seconds, and then Robinhood says, oops, the odds changed, do you want to try it again? And I think bringing that into sports betting, where the understanding, the table stakes become no delay, I get my trade on at the best possible price, is something where market makers can help us do that. I think what's been a lot harder is once they get into the paperwork of like, oh my gosh, I have to give away the naming rights of my third child in order to get a license in state X, Y, or Z, that's hard for them because they adhere to federal regulations, and even those federal regulations are actually less strict than state regulations, which to me was kind of surprising getting into the industry.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I've always been surprised, and I think it would probably benefit everyone in this room if more states opened up and if there was more competition and innovation allowed. But we're in New York, and whether you call yourself a fintech company or a sports betting company, they won't let more companies take bets in the state, unfortunately, at least in the current environment. How do you balance those challenges and advocating for the industry to become more open and welcoming to startups of all shapes and sizes and formats?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for us as a culture, we will always stand for more innovation, more open markets. And I think as we're becoming an operator and as we become involved in a lot of these states, it's going to be really easy for us to try and be like many others and block others out. But I think what we all have to remember is our industry only grows if we encourage people. Like I can see a lot of entrepreneurs here that are in various life cycles and want to be operators. And it should be like the UK. It should be 10,000 pounds and you can open up a sports betting operator, because what you get is you get innovation and you get an incredible amount of ingenuity and the customer benefits. So I think, for us, it's always going to be about, it's our culture. We are a free marketplace. That is what Sporttrade is. And I think, pursuant to that, we should support having as many operators in as many states as possible. There are 14 U.S. equities exchanges. This sports betting business is going to be such a big business. We don't have to block others out in order to create value. That's just my viewpoint.
If we were to fast forward 10 years and chart out the Sporttrade trading volume, do you think that chart would be more closely correlated to sports betting handle over that time, or equity retail flows over that time, or neither?
Equity retail flows. I think as spreads come down and as commissions come down, volumes go up. That's a very easy thing to kind of look at historically. One of NASDAQ's, the first thing they said when they met me is they said, what do you think the yearly transactional volume would be on a CFTC regulated DCM? And the number started with a T, and it's easy to say. I mean, even the experts of Betfair in the audience, some days at Betfair, the volume of messages coming to their matching engine was higher than the London Stock Exchange. And there's a ton of retail interest in betting. I mean, everyone bets. There's actually even more bettors right now than there are stock traders, and that's why Robinhood has so much room to grow, and Coinbase has so much room to grow.
In the beginning, you viewed yourself as a retail business, like a Coinbase or Robinhood. Where do you think there's room for you in almost being a broker's broker, right? So the sports books start offloading on you? Have you looked at that portion?
We have. I think what's more interesting for operators is less the risk management piece. There's a lot of complexities around that. You have the Wire Act being one, you have excise tax being one, you have different states treating gross gaming revenue as taxable in one way versus the other. So it's really hard if I'm an operator in Michigan that's also in New Jersey to offload a position from New Jersey to Michigan and vice versa, because Michigan regulators only see Michigan revenues and they owe that whatever percent NGR tax on that revenue. So I think what's more interesting is the market data piece. That we could go to someone and say, hey, take this feed, it's free. We have this really cool thing where we don't have delays on our venue for in-play. And don't you want to do that? And don't you want to truly differentiate and get rid of that countdown clock? And if we can get operators involved and interested in that, I think there's a way higher margin business to be had there. And that's why NASDAQ tries to move away from transactional businesses and into kind of market data and technology businesses.
The institutional groups that you're working with, do they seem primarily motivated to essentially risklessly arb the bid-ask? Are they looking at sports betting as a new uncorrelated asset class? Is it more one than the other, or is it a bit of both?
It's a great question. I don't really know too much about the market making business. I think that it would be every market maker's and every bookmaker's dream to have a totally balanced book because you have no risk. But the fact of the matter is when we launch in New Jersey, and the Giants are trading $55, everyone's going to be, lifting the Giants at 55, and the market makers, it's going to be really interesting to see, because then sometimes you see the splits on DraftKings like 97% to 3%. It's because they're able to understand which of their customers that come to their front door are sharp customers. That doesn't exist on an exchange. All you get as a market maker is a fill message. You have no idea who your counterparty is. So it'd be really interesting to see, are there ARBs that develop because market makers say, like, I'm just so short from 55, I have to slide my offer and bid up, and DraftKings staying, and now there's an ARB opportunity per customer in New Jersey. So it's really exciting to see how that's all going to play out.
So who do you think the customer is in that scenario then? Because you mentioned a younger audience bringing new customers in. Is it that, or is it the really sharp customers trying to get more volume ultimately, and how does that match?
I think it will be both. I think the success or failure of Sporttrade is going to be purely defined by our ability to bring customers into this space that are doing this because they love trading. Not because the prices are better, not that they won't be, they will be, but I think we've seen historically that the pitch of we have better prices only goes so far, and you tend to attract the customers that are lowest margin customers. It's why Robinhood does really well, because everyone's submitting market order 1 second delayed from the national NBBO. And that's what we need. So I think that we can service those sharp customers, but in order to balance out the sharp customers, we need to get that Robinhood customer, the Coinbase customer that maybe doesn't understand what minus 110 means, but says like, oh, I want to buy the Giants at 55, and if they score a touchdown, they'll go to 85 and I'll sell them. And that's exactly the customer we want to build and educate, and I think Robinhood and Coinbase, and I've said that 100 times already, any company, Gem and I have done such an amazing job of educating. Robinhood has 20 million customers, Coinbase has 10 million customers. Americans already know how to trade. We want to take them and allow them to trade sports.
As usual, even though I feel dumber, I'm actually quite a bit smarter for having heard you speak. So a big round of applause for Alex. And that's it. We did it. Thanks to my esteemed panelists. Thanks to all the members of the Hot Six. We will see you next year.